I'm Shaun O'Neill, owner of Essential Talent, and we provide keynote speakers for various companies throughout Australasia, covering a lot of subjects. Now, obviously, with coronavirus coming, that put a huge amount of pressure on our business, so we had to pivot fairly quickly, and we have been doing webinars. Now, by far and away, the most popular webinar series has been with Dr. Tom Mulholland, who has he started off doing some work for our client McDonald's in New Zealand, helping their management team, and it's been so well received. And we've had a whole lot of other companies as well interested in working with Dr. Tom. So it's a real honour to have him on board and part of our roster. And he's now going to talk you through what he covers in the webinar and how he can help your company and your team. Dr. Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. Well, it's great to be here, and thanks for reacting. Like survival of the fittest, and you have to adapt to survive. So certainly, with all my speaking engagements being cancelled all around the world and Australia as well, I thought the best way to get the content out is to do these webinars. So Shaun got us in with McDonald's pretty quick, and we're well into those. And we've had feedback. Dr. Tom, thanks again for your time with your COVID-19 webinars. The positive feedback, has been really overwhelmingly positive. So that was from Brendan, the National Franchise Manager for McDonald's. So look, what I thought I'd do is just introduce myself, because you may not know who I am, and explain what gives me the authority to talk about COVID-19 and how it's going to affect you, how it affects your family and your business. Now, I'm just going to give you an overview of the webinars and sort of go through them quickly. This is not like the webinar itself, but just give you a bit of an idea so you know who I am and how I can help. So I like helping people. So let's be there, and I've been an emergency department doctor for 30 years now. I've worked all around the country and the world, really, in all sorts of places. I'm also an author. I've written a couple of best-selling books on healthy thinking I'm going to come to. I've been a speaker for about 20 years. I reckon I've done about 2,000 presentations now, Google, Microsoft, Hilton, all around the world, workshops, and now I can add a series of webinars to this. And certainly it's a different way of doing it, but the content's the same. It's just that I can't see you or hear you unless you're doing the Q&A, which has been proving really popular. I've also been an honorary lecturer in psychological medicine at the University of Auckland, and done a lot of research around how our emotions affect our ability to function and around risk. I've been staffed in New Zealand as our syndicated newspaper system online, so I've been writing columns on wellbeing for the last 3 years, and I've also had my own daily TV shows, a bit like Dr. Phil on New Zealand TV, and had my own weekly talkback show on Radio Live, Dr. Tom, the Attitude Hour, where we just had callers, so I'm very used to being able to talk to callers and answer questions on the fly, so I find the Q&A easy. And I did something on Facebook for Hyundai a couple of days ago, just a Q&A. I think we had 13,000 views. And so I'm able to ask you questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll find someone that does. So as I say, I've been working at Auckland Hospital, but I've worked all around the country, and I was just speaking to one of my colleagues today, and hospital occupancy in our emergency department is down to about 32% at the hospital, whereas if you look at offshore in the UK and obviously New York, it's just getting slammed. So we're very fortunate in this country due to the measures that we've taken, and normally we're seeing about half the patients, I believe, go through our ED than normal because people are staying away. So obviously that's not sustainable, but I want to give you some advice on how you can stay safe and your loved ones, and also your employees. So a little bit about my pandemic experience. So I was an intern at San Francisco General ED in 1989 when AIDS was in full swing, and I remember just ventilators filled, same thing, just massive amount of beds, and we'd go around every morning, and two questions were, does this patient have insurance, excuse my American accent, and do they have any relatives? And if the answer is no to both of those, basically they were taken off a ventilator, and they passed away because there was a queue of people trying to get on ventilators with bilateral, what's called PCP pneumonia, which looks very similar to this acute respiratory distress sort of syndrome we're getting through COVID-19. So certainly certainly experienced that, just been absolutely smashed, and our wards full of ventilated patients with pneumonia. Also saw bird flu H5N1 in 1997. Now, thankfully, that's got a 60% mortality, which is huge. Whereas you look at COVID's about 0.2, we think, but unfortunately, bird flu doesn't get transmitted very easily, human to human. Thank goodness. SARS came along in 2003. There weren't any masks. There was hardly any PPE, and I've been running medical clinics trying to deal with this. H1N1 swine flu came in 2009, and it's very similar to the Spanish flu that came through in 1918. I saw a patient with swine flu, caught it myself, and I still think I've got a bit of a cough as a result of that. It's a pretty nasty disease, H1N1. You don't want to get it. So every year, for 30 years, I've seen influenza cases. That's why I get vaccinated. And if you look globally, it's estimated about 750,000 people die of influenza every year. And, when it all washes out, it might be that COVID is twice that amount. But certainly, we see, thousands of people dying every year of influenza in the US. Maybe 30,000 people die of influenza, including 22-year-olds, 30-year-olds, but it just doesn't have the media sort of attention we get now. So I say I've seen it all before, but I have not seen this amount of panic before. So this webinar series is really designed to try and reduce some of the panic, or the panicdemic, as I call it, around COVID-19. So what's different about COVID-19? Well, it's fast transmission, right? Asymptomatic people, it might be 80% of people don't even know they've had it, but they'll test positive. There's also, as I say, asymptomatic spread, so you don't know that you've got it. So testing is quite, trying to get the numbers sensible around testing can be difficult. Social media is huge, and if you look at like mass ICU admissions and death, and when you drill down to it, what's on social media, like in New York, and everyone's going, look at these mass graves, and as we're terrorizing ourselves and our children with these images coming through. And just like I was terrorized when I was young, looking at Vietnam images coming into our black and white TV, our one channel, and I didn't want to go to war, and I was terrorized, and I should have been. I didn't want to go to Vietnam and fight as a 7-year-old or as a 20-year-old, but our youth are being terrorized with these images. But when you drill down, this is just my opinion, what I've seen, like these graves have been happening on this island off New York, for a long time, as they were in 1989 in San Francisco. And they're not, people go, it's all these people don't get to say goodbye to their loved ones. The people being buried there don't have loved ones, or either homeless, and they don't. So, and they were operating like a day a week, and now it's gone up because the numbers have gone up. So you just have to find out what's true in everything that we're looking at, right? There's unpredictable projections in New Zealand, like we're saying, less than 100 deaths, and modelling are up to 30,000, and that's a massive difference, right? As I say, we still hear, stories of children dying, and in the webinars, I can talk about immune systems and how, kids have died from the plague, and it all turns down to our own immune system and how that's programmed, and how we're at risk, right, for these for dying. And obviously the government response is different from country to country, and we've just been heard, half an hour ago, we're told we're staying at level 4 for another week. So we can't control the government response, but we can control our own response to this data, really. So, we're still in lockdown, and I reassure people the world will not end, but that has dramatically changed. So our first webinar of this series of 4, I'm just trying to set up around COVID-19 and then give regular updates through each webinar. It has dramatically changed from what we knew, and it will change, and it's going to continue to change over the coming weeks and months. So the key thing in webinar 1 is getting people to look after yourself and look after their own family, reassurance that we will get through this. The world's not going to end. We managed almost a month in level 4 in New Zealand, and we're still going okay. We remember the lockdown and what we did, which is more important, I think. It's not what happens to us, but our attitude towards it that counts. And the adventure, right? So in World War II, when the sky was falling on our my parents' heads, literally, they did a study of, mothers that were like, whenever they heard the air raid siren going off, they're like, oh my God, the world's going to end, and they panic. And then they compared it with mothers that went, wow, the air raid siren's going off. Where can we go and hide? Let's hide and seek. Let's turn it into an adventure. And for lots of reasons, that the anxiety rate transferred to children there, where the parents were freaking out, compared to those that went, this is an adventure. was markedly different. So what we teach our kids in this time is very important, right? So it's important that we're solid. And like my parents, my dad's got one lung. He lost one lung to lung cancer. He's 82 years of age. He's Scottish, and my daughter rings and goes inquiring about his mental health, and my dad's going, "Hey, we've seen this before. We had the war, we were bombed, and and then polio." He says, "I think there's going to be a lot of Buddhigans out there in October." And so my mother and him are still arguing after a month of lockdown on what cruise they should go on in October. So they're optimistic, and they're seeing this as an adventure, and I know some people's businesses are affected more, but that's just a different way of looking at it. Hope, make some plans, as my parents are, as a way to get through it, and really look after your physical, mental, and your social health. And that's what we're going to cover, a lot of physical health and then mental health, and give you tools and your team how to use these tools, which I've been teaching for 20 years, how to get through this pandemic. So if we look at, just say, the mortality rate for COVID-19, currently it's about 2 in 1,000, right? So 0.0 to 0.2. So for every 1,000 people that get it, about 2 people are dying, right? And look, if you look at Italy compared to Germany, what the mortality rate, if it's infecting people, older people in rest homes, younger people, the mortality rate's going to change depending on who got it first, right, and how it's transmitted. So, if you're healthy and fit, it might be that you've got a 1 in 10,000 chance of dying of COVID-19. However, if you have other risk factors such as type 2 diabetes, you're a smoker, your risk might go up to 5 in 1,000, if that kind of makes sense. So what I'm trying to focus on is getting you into the green zone, not being in the red zone of 5 in 1,000. And that makes, it makes a lot of difference, right? If you can improve your risk by looking after yourself. So don't forget the basics, right? So this is blood pressure, and we talk about blood pressure, but this is a blood pressure of 227 over 136 with a pulse rate of 97. This person's anxious. And, I've been out of my ambulance going around testing in communities and workplace for the last 5 years, trying to keep people out of hospital. And the consequences of having a blood pressure like this are going to give you a stroke and intracranial bleed. Now, interestingly enough, I was talking to the head of neurosurgery at Auckland Hospital, just this morning, and as I predicted, their trauma rate it has dropped down. People going out, getting drunk, banging their heads, but the intracranial bleeds are still really up there, right? So there's still more people are going to die as do every day of strokes and heart attacks than do of COVID-19. So make sure you get your pills. Talking to my GP colleagues, 80% down, people coming in, right? Don't forget, this is way more lethal than COVID-19, right? So don't forget to get your blood pressure checked. Keep taking your pills, It's really important to measure and track your blood pressure. And as I say, this is the fundamentals of being well. And we talked about high blood pressure as being a risk that, for dying of COVID-19 or going on a ventilator. If you talk about Takotsubo syndrome, broken heart syndrome, if we look at ECG, that's when you're nice and healthy. But when you're really stressed, and you might be stressed about other problems you've got in your business, and you get COVID-19 or in lockdown another day or another week, then you go into this VT, what we call ventricular tachycardia. So, we saw this in Christchurch earthquakes, mosque shootings, whether it's Australia, what's ever happening there. We if your heart stops, it's a plumbing or electrical problem. So that's why it's important to really manage our stress, because a lot more people are going to get this Takotsubo syndrome. It's Japanese for octopus pot, and our heart goes into this fatal rhythm if we don't control our stress. So I talk a lot about the mind and the brain, and the mind is the software and the brain is our hardware. So this is an MRI of my brain. And in the webinar one, we talk a lot about neurochemistry and the volcano of emotion, or the Grump unit. So if you don't what you get expect in life, it sends a discharge down the worry circuit and activates the Grump unit at the moment. And you can imagine how many Grump units are going off at the moment. Now, you may not know you've got a Grump unit. You may think you married one, or they think they've married one. But we lose situational awareness, and we expose ourselves to more risk. Might be, actually work is not as dangerous as at home. Like you probably wouldn't go to work and change a light bulb by putting a chair on a table, but you might do that at home, right? So really, we're trying to get signal back to our prefrontal cortex. So what are some tools that we can use? And in webinar 2 and 3, we really cover off some of these tools. Now, I didn't really expect my life to turn out the way it did, and I've been hit by a tsunami at 2 o'clock in the morning at this place called Grudgegan in G-Land, and I was working as a camp doctor in 1994, and it killed hundreds of people around me, and I was stuck there for 3 days. So I've certainly developed these tools out of adversity. I helped out in the Boxing Day tsunami in 2004 and went over to an island of Nias off the coast of Banda Aceh and was awarded a New Zealand Defence Force medal for helping out there. And really, you know, so I know what trauma's like, and also having worked in emergency departments for 30 years. I got divorced. That's not unusual. Some of you might be already. And then I got stabbed in a home invasion and nearly bled to death. Not by the same person who stabbed me, I should say. Then the other thing is, you know, I had this venture capital company, Dr. Global, which I started and then had you got all this money and created this Dr. Global. We were doing online consultations like 20 years ago, and we were told 20 years ago it was too dangerous to see a doctor online. Now we're told it's too dangerous to see a patient. So way ahead of my time, but basically got divorced, stabbed, lost my company in rapid succession. So, you know, basically I you know, got down myself and got depressed, and I thought, gee, you know, like, how do I get out of this? And being a doctor, I thought I need to find a way myself. So discovered what I call healthy thinking and wrote this book, which is in about 12 languages, and basically how to turn lemons into lemonade. And yeah, so it's been around for a while, but really developed a whole thinking pattern and tools how we can change our thinking. And certainly we've got a big lemon on our hand with COVID-19. So how do we turn that into sugar-free lemonade, not affecting our diabetes? So I talk about the software. So here are the 10 unhealthy emotions, and you know, hopefully you're not angry right now, but you might be stressed about what's coming up. But if you're not stressed, and if you're not angry, if you're not anxious right now, how are you going to become angry? And the answer is, you know, to think of something to make you angry. So this essence of healthy thinking is what can we control in this pandemic, right? So we can control our panic, control our anxiety. So a trigger happens, which then creates a thought, which then creates an emotion, which then creates an action, and then creates, you know, a consequence or a benefit, depending on what you think. So in this webinar series, what I'm doing is explaining how you can change your thoughts and giving you some tools. It's called antivirus software for the mind. So what are you thinking about? And what we teach is a process. It's like whatever, whether it's McDonald's, you're trying to make a Big Mac, or, you know, if you're a forestry worker, you're trying to get a log that's finished. What are you processing? And in healthy thinking, we're trying to process the thought. What am I thinking that's making me anxious? What am I thinking that's making me angry? What am I thinking? Because it's not what's happening to you. It's what you're thinking about it that's making you angry. So we have some tools. One's called a cognitive switch, and I'm switching the signal. So every time there's a crisis, and I've been teaching this for a long time, and talked to, you know, St. John ambulance workers in the Christchurch earthquakes, and, you know, crisis equals an opportunity. So what's the opportunity here? You know, what are the opportunities with COVID-19? So straight away, when all my speaking gigs are like cancelled, you know, traveling, the opportunities to talk to Shaun and Essential Talent, say, Shaun, people are still wanting me to speak. I just can't get there. So let's do webinars, right? And they've worked out really, really well, and I'm really enjoying it. The only thing I miss is the travel, and I miss not looking at your faces and getting you know, feedback. But there is a Q&A session in the webinars that you can ask questions. You know, the other question is, why change your attitude? Well, you know, is your current one working for you, really? And often it's not. And then it's not COVID-19 that may harm you, but it's your attitude and well-being to it that will, right? So how can we best prepare, either physiologically or from a business perspective, to cope with COVID-19? So cognitive switches, you know, you can change how you think, how you feel, how you act. And one of my favorites is crisis equals opportunity. So the minute kind of everything went down and all speaking like boom, 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 just cancelled overnight, I'm like, okay, what's the opportunity here, right? So the second I'm looking for the opportunity, I'm not wasting time. I'm sending signal back to my prefrontal cortex, the rational part of my brain, and I'm looking for the opportunity, right? I'm always looking for opportunity. There's no problems, there's only solutions. Like, life's a treasure hunt. Now, I know, you know, like if you've got a loved one that's in intensive care at the moment, it's pretty hard to think that, okay? But this is an example of some cognitive switches. So, you know, a lot of what I get is out of Stoic philosophy. So it's not what happens to me, but my attitude towards it that counts. We cover attitudes in webinar 3. There are no problems, only solutions. I don't even say that anymore. I just go, there are no challenges, only solutions. And you'll see some of the healthy thinking posters behind me. Will I worry about this in a month? Well, probably not. If the answer is yes, well, I'll worry about it in 2 months, right? So, there's all these things that we can say to ourselves that calm ourselves down, reduce our heart rate, help us sleep, stop us ruminating. One pale blue dot in one of the workshops I ran as a guy like Carl Sagan, when he wrote about the Voyager, went out and looked back on the solar system, and Earth was just one pale blue dot. And he says that to himself when things are getting stressed. And non-COVID-19, look, what I'm experiencing with just one pale blue dot in the universe, and it's not significant, right? It's significant to me, but in the scheme of things, this is not significant. The future hasn't been made yet, right? So we can make the future by changing our thinking and changing our attitude. Another way to break rumination is, what am I grateful for? Like, I'm grateful that I'm breathing. I'm grateful that I don't have COVID that I know of. I'm grateful that I've still got a business. I'm grateful I've got family. I'm grateful I've got food. The minute and the second you're grateful for things, even at 2 a.m, you're breaking that rumination cycle and you're helping you sleep, reducing cortisol, raising dopamine. So, we talk a lot about neurochemistry. So, let's say we're anxious. So this is more moving into webinar 2 now, but how do you know? I don't talk about positive or negative emotions. I talk about whether it's healthy or unhealthy. So how do we tell? And we run through a process called twigging. So are our thoughts true? Are they worth it? And do those thoughts help me achieve my goal? You've only got 2 choices in life. You change what you think, or you change what you do. You change the trigger, or you change your thoughts. If you get no to any one of these, you change your thought. If you get yes to all of them, you run through this other process, A, B, C, D. You alert the trigger, bypass, change, or delete. We've also got an e-learning program. You can go online and learn this stuff through an e-learning program. So emotion minus trigger equals thought. So we run through this process, AEIOU, and it's probably the whole one webinar is running through examples of what the process is and the quality control. And if you give people tools to manage their anxiety, manage their stress, manage their anger, manage their frustration, then they don't come bothering you. Well, not so much bothering you, but they can sort it out themselves, right? And you can teach this to your kids as well. It's really useful to teach to your families. It takes a little while, but once you learn this tool, you can do this stuff on your own and just sort your own problems out. So in webinar 3, we run through these attitude profiles. So how I got to these is I looked at about 10,000 sets of data, and I noticed there were ways in that people got stressed themselves. So, the government should have done this, and this person should have done that. My kids should have tidied their room. That's the demander, the first on the left. But being a doctor, I wanted to invent a cure for these things. You can't just put people in boxes. This is attitude profiling, which is different from personality profiling. Personality profiling is trait. It's like your hardware, your brain, whereas attitude is your state, is your mind. So the opposite, if you go, the demander is the trader. So you'll say to your kids, instead of you should tidy your room, I would prefer it if you tidy your room, because if you don't, these are the consequences. So it's not about lowering your standards, it's by using neurosemantics and different words to create different examples. And the other thing, it's a really good way to deal with difficult people, right? So the fortune teller, don't do these webinars, that'll never work. I've been told that. The opposite below there, this explorer, how do you know unless you try? The judge, the denialer. So in webinar 3, we really run through these profiles. And once you start to notice these things, you can treat them, and you can treat them in yourself and others, right? And whether you're a demander, a fortune teller, a generalizer, a judge, a denialist, there's other ones as well. Doom merchants. Some people are addicted to being miserable. You say to them, have a nice day. They'll go, sorry, I've made other plans. So how do we find these traits, or I should say states in ourselves, and how do we cure them, right? So that's webinar 3. Webinar 4, we run into sleep and mindfulness and meditation, and just how we can really calm the farm between our ears, and cover some other aspects and questions and answers you may have around either COVID or how to get through this, what's going ahead. So really that's a bit of a, just a bit of an intro, a bit of a trailer really into what we can do with our full webinar series. So, really big shout out to you, Shaun and Megan, for helping us put this together, and really look forward to helping you and your colleagues, your employees, your suppliers, and also your families